I'm going to call the City Council meeting to order. I can get this chair in. If everyone could just take a moment and silence your cell phones.
I know.
And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have two items tonight under proclamations. The first is employee recognition, so I'm going to recognize the city manager to do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. I hope you enjoy these as much as we do sharing them with you. We have several very unique recognitions that I would like to cover with you today. First, we have special recognitions from the Water Department, so I would like to call up the Director of Water Resources, Steve Shove, and Karen Moss, and Roger Massey. Karen Moss received the 2014 Herman Drake Award. This award is presented to the person providing outstanding service and is recognized for their dedication for the Department of Public Works and Solid Waste in North Carolina. There are only two recipients in the state of North Carolina in 2014. Karen's role has been that of providing the exceptional, she's a senior secretary in the department and has been the person that you could always rely upon to get the work done. Very reliable and a role model in the department. And Steve, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay. So if we could give her recognition and a hand for receiving the award. And the thing about that's a good contrast with the Herman Drake Award and what I would say is above and beyond and an everyday hero in comparison is the Herman Drake Award is that person who is constantly there, can be relied upon for customer service every day, whatever the challenge is, whatever the call is, the person that's there and does what's expected at a high degree of performance. Roger Massey. Roger, if you'll step forward. Now, then you have the exceptional, which is above and beyond and not within the line of duty. And what I would like to describe for you is an incident that occurred on December 11th. Roger is a water engineering inspector, was driving in the Grovemont area in Swannanoa. He was inspecting large meter system upgrade projects. This is the work that we're trying to do, put in to make sure that we're cutting down on leakage and we have better delivery of water services. He came upon 139 Delwood Avenue in Swannanoa. He saw flames on the side of the house. He stopped and knocked on the door. I believe you went back a second time, didn't you? Didn't have an initial answer. Went back just to be certain that there wasn't anybody in the house. The homeowner was napping in the house with her dogs on the inside. Roger made her aware of the problem. The residents left. They called 911. Potentially a life was saved and the fire was put out. This is the kind of employee Roger Massey is. Would like to give. So, stellar day, work day in and day out, and then when you least expect it, the city employee is there to step in and do what needs to be done as they see it in the field. Very, very complimentary work. Thank you all very much. Thank you. I didn't see him immediately come in. Is Chris Coral here? Okay. Understand that I just want to mention we have a special recognition for Chris Coral, who's the general manager of U.S. Cellular, but I think he's doing something a little above and beyond as well. I think he's becoming a father, has recently become a father, so he's not going to be here tonight. If I could, I'd like to invite the Public Works Director, Greg Schuler, to come forward with his High Point ICE team. If everybody would come on up for just a moment. On March 7th, High Point, North Carolina, suffered a major ice storm that knocked out power for several days and had a tremendous amount of damage to the city and their trees. High Point was unable to cope with all the wood waste that the storm created. They gave out a call for mutual aid to us, and here is the bulk of the team that responded. In addition to doing the early response of 11-hour shifts to clear up the debris, get people safely back into their homes. They continued through the weekend to do that, and then on April 11th, a second team went to supply and to give them some relief, and a second team was brought in. Officials in High Point were very supportive of this and referred to them as our Get Her Done team. So these folks deserve special recognition. I'm going to let Greg, if you'll come up for just a moment, and just speak to a moment of how we get this opportunity and we reciprocate on a general basis, and then I think we'll let folks come up and introduce themselves. So when do you get calls and how do you normally respond? Okay,
thank you, Gary. Mayor, members of City Council, this is just a fine representation of the employees that we have in Public Works. It's really all over the city, but occasionally we'll get a call for mutual aid. We've had to do it in the past, not since I've been here, but it's, you know, brothers and sisters in the cause across our state that do the same thing we do. We did not have any trouble at all finding volunteers to go and assist these folks. These folks and others like them are very good at what they do. They left their own homes and their families to go and take care of the others in the central part of the state. Really proud of the efforts that they, not only they put forth here, but were great ambassadors for the city of Asheville down in High Point. And with that being said, I'd like for each one of them, we'll start with you, Mark. You can come up and announce say who you are and what you do.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm your city arborist. I oversee the urban forestry program here in Asheville. So, if a tree falls in Asheville, I sooner or later hear it.
That's Mark Foster. You didn't say your name, I don't think, did you?
No, give us the full name.
Hello, my name is Kirby Howell. I'm a MEO3 tree climber, tree crew.
And my name's Eric Cern. Hi, by the way. Excuse me. I'm MEO2 currently now and operate various types of equipment. Thank you.
Hello, Jonathan Coates, City of Asheville Tree Crew Supervisor. I run tree crew, the operations, daily operations. Hello, Bernard McDowell. I'm the Safety Officer for Public Works and Water Maintenance.
I just want to point out one thing to everybody here. These guys have put in a long day already, if you hadn't already noticed that. So thanks a lot for staying here tonight, and it's real important for your families and yourself to be recognized. It's difficult work, it's challenging work, it's physically challenging, and it's high risk. So appreciate you being safe while you're doing it. You make us proud. Thanks a lot. All right, one more recognition. We've got a good cross-section here tonight. I'd like to invite Captain Stoney Gantz to come forward with the team that responded to an incident at Asheville Mall. Captain Gantz is going to tell you a little bit more detail about the very intelligent, tactical, cool, highly responsive effort that this team put in. Really really should be proud of the work. But what you have before you tonight are people that we should all be very proud of, the bravery and the talent that they put into this every day, risking their lives for us. I salute you and look forward to getting a little bit more detail from Captain Gauntz.
Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Captain Stoney Gauntz with Patrol Operations. Appreciate the opportunity to come and recognize these individuals. On April 28th of this year, these guys received a call of a person with a gun near the Asheville Mall. It started out near the Thunderbird Motel on Tunnel Road. As these calls typically go, we have very little information other than it sounds pretty dangerous. These guys were close. They responded efficiently and effectively. They get near the mall and they're getting information that a person on a motorcycle had discharged a firearm several times at some occupants in a car. They find the motorcycle crashed near the entrance to the mall, and the occupant of the motorcycle, the gunman, is not in sight. Apparently had went into the mall area. These guys, not knowing if we had an active shooter scenario or what going on, they form a rapid response, rapid deployment type team. They immediately go into the mall and start searching the building, and they can't find him in the common areas. They go into the restrooms, find him held up in one of the stalls with the door locked. They get him come out, take him into custody, and find the gun stowed in a trash can and bring this to a safe and peaceful resolution and protect a lot of people in doing so. So it's an awesome opportunity to be able to commend these guys for a job well done and keeping us safe. That's pretty heroic. If you guys don't mind, come up here and introduce yourselves, please.
I'm Scott Fry. I'm with the Traffic Safety Unit and Asheville Buncombe DWI Task Force.
Officer James French, work Patrol Division in East Asheville.
Irvin Hunter. I work patrol on North Asheville.
Let's all give them a round.
Mayor, I think we should give those other folks who have been recognized a standing ovation.
All right, we're doing an all-around thing.
All around, those people, Steve and Ray.
Doesn't cost us? No.
I love when we start with staff recognitions. It always sets such a nice tone for our meeting. The next item on our agenda is a proclamation proclaiming September 8th through 12th, 2014 as Minority Enterprise Development Week. James Lee, is James Lee here? Yes. Oh, here. I'm going to read the proclamation, and then if you'll say a few words. This is a joint proclamation between the City of Asheville and Buncombe County. So I am reading a document that is signed by both myself and Commissioner David Gant. Whereas strong and vibrant communities involve all citizens in economic progress, and whereas minority entrepreneurs make significant contributions to our economy, and whereas we enter into an era of expanded opportunities in economic growth and development, and face the economic challenges ahead, it is appropriate that we encourage minority business owners by recognizing their contributions toward the continued economic development of our community. And whereas National Minority Enterprise Development Week is recognized for its importance as economic challenges continue on the national level, and whereas Minority Enterprise Development Week of Western North Carolina, Incorporated, has provided training and a week-long celebration of minority-owned businesses for the past 31 years. And whereas local observance of Minority Enterprise Development Week will be the week of September 8th through 14th, 2014. Now, therefore, we, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, and David Gant, Chairman of the Board of Commissioners for Buncombe County, do hereby proclaim the week of September 8th through 14th, 2014 as Minority Enterprise Development Week in the City of Asheville and County of Buncombe, and urge all citizens to join the minority business enterprises of our community in appropriate observances. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and the seals of the City of Asheville and the County of Buncombe to be affixed this 26th day of August 2014 and the 2nd day of September 2014. That will be signed by the county. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. We really appreciate your continued support for Minority Enterprise Development Week of Western North Carolina. I'm here this evening with some of our board members, as all of our board is volunteer. So we try and work to be able to present some great programs for our ethnic minorities within our community to help build and strengthen and advocate for those businesses. Coming up with capital and having the opportunity to start and open their business and even expand their business to be competitive with the mainstream America is very difficult. So we want to make sure that we are an organization that supports and advocates for those businesses. To be able to do so, it takes sponsorships, which the city and county has been so gracious to sponsor us every year. And as we go into our 31st year, we've implemented some of our other sponsors, which is the Support Center, who is our presenting sponsor this year, Sequoia Fund, TD Bank, Mission Health. All of our large institutions are supporting this event and these efforts. Some of the programs that we're going to put on this year is going to be Meet Your Board, or Meet the Minority Enterprise Development Week Board of Directors, the Small Business Resources and Funded Resources for Minority Businesses, Meet Your Lender, Business Formation, Choosing the Right Structure. We're going to have an incubation and social entrepreneur that will happen at Block by Block. And then, of course, our 31st annual awards reception, which will take place again at Homewood. And all of these events, because of our great sponsors, are free and open to the public and free for our minority businesses to come and receive this training. So we want to thank you again for another year of supporting us. We hope that you'll be able to come out and witness some awards that we'll be giving out to our minority businesses. We have some great award recipients this year, and so we would encourage you to come out on September the 11th at 5:30 to participate. All these events will be on our website if you're interested in finding out more information or attending one of them. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to receive this proclamation for another year.
All right, that concludes our proclamations. Moving on to our consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to have voted on separately, pulled out, or have a question or comment about?
I'd move to approve the consent
Gary
agenda.
is indicating there.
I think Finance Committee, someone, perhaps the chair or Ms. Whistler, would want to speak to the franchise agreements with the transportation entities.
Right. So we're talking about items O, P, and Q. And although I think I'm supportive of renewing these franchise agreements, I would just ask that staff, in connection with the budgeting process for next year, relook at the franchise agreements and the fees relative to the kind of support that the city and costs that the city incurs, and look at those fees relative to that.
Okay.
Then I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to make comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Please state your name.
Yes, my name is Judy Strong. I have a question about number C, where you're potentially going to apply for special obligation bonds that are supposedly going to be paid for by the existing debt service agreement that we have. And I was wondering if when you bring this up on October 14th, I guess, I read that someplace that it's going to be presented at that time. If you could let us know how much money you're talking about in terms of what our debt is going to be. You're going to leverage again, and so I just have some concerns about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to provide any comment on the motion to approve the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have adopted the consent agenda. Moving to presentations and reports, we have a mass exodus first, and then we will have the legislative update. And I know Paul, our Featherston, our Assistant City Manager, is here, but I'm going to just go ahead and call on Mr. Jack Kozort to help us with this item. While Mr. Kozort is making his way to the front of the room, Mr. Kozort is our legislative liaison here from Raleigh tonight to help us with the legislative update and legislative agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and staff. I'm honored to represent the city of Asheville and to assist you in your legislative matters. This is a great, growing, thriving city, and I'm pleased to be a part of what you're doing here. And I'm also pleased to be here tonight to discuss with you what has been happening in the General Assembly and what we anticipate will be coming up in the 2015 session. We just finished up a few days ago what is known as the short session in North Carolina. It wasn't very short. It used to be until the 1970s that the General Assembly met only in odd-numbered years, met for 5 or 6 months. They passed a 2-year budget. They considered everything they were going to consider, and they went home. Everybody went back to work. Business went on. In the 70s, they started doing very short budget adjustment sessions to come in and adjust the state budget based on increases or decreases in revenue. And those short sessions lasted for about 10 or 12 years. And then those short sessions gradually started to grow as they started.
Sorry.
I'm done.
Sorry about that.
Very short. You're not off the short session.
If only we could do that to the short session.
But they started considering a lot of matters that did not affect the budget. And those sessions began to grow and grow. So the short session this year began May 14th and finally finished about 10 days ago. So late that we're already in the process of planning for the 2015 session, which will start the 4th week in January 2015. I haven't looked exactly about how long it is, but I heard a staff member for the General Assembly say in the last week that this was the longest short session, or the second longest short session on record. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with, and I want to talk to you about some of the items that came up during this short session. I've given you a bullet point list there. I don't intend to read all of those to you, but I just wanted to hit the highlights on some of those and to let you know that if you want more information about any items that are listed there, I'll be happy to discuss those with you. You can either get in touch with me directly or go through Gary's office or Robin's office on that. Before I start talking about those specific issues, I want to take a little bit broader look about what's been going on the last 4 years in the General Assembly. As you know, under the Constitution of North Carolina, cities and counties have only that authority that's granted to them by the legislature. You can't go out and independently do whatever you want to do. There are some general grants of authority, and then there are some that are very specific. For example, if you wanted to, like some cities have, adopt an ordinance putting a camera at certain intersections in order to record people who pass through red lights, you have to go to the General Assembly before you can do that. You can't just do that on your own. And then there are general provisions that deal with things like allowing you to do your water systems, your other enterprise functions. What's been going on the last 4 years is that the legislature, in its role as adopting the policies for the state, has been re-examining and re-evaluating the grant of authority that cities have enjoyed in North Carolina for a long period of time. They're looking at the relationship between state government and local government and the citizens to see if there's the right balance of the discretion you have and the amount of control they have. And that's why it's been so active the last 4 years, the last two-year sessions, in matters involving municipal government. So that's what we've been dealing with on the ground, on your behalf in Raleigh, and it's what you have to deal with here in your planning process and in deciding what's the best way for you to exercise your role as an economic engine. And as you know, Asheville is not just the economic engine for the city or for the county. You're the economic engine for all of western North Carolina, and there are certain things that you need to be able to do. And so what our role is to try to protect your ability to be able to do what you have done and need to do to continue your role. Given that as a background, let me talk about a few of the things that came up during the session. I think all of you have a copy of the bullet points that I passed out. I think sometimes if you read what's printed about the legislature, you would think that municipalities had no success in the legislative session, and that's not true. There were some issues that came up that we were able to, I think, protect the city's interest. We work very closely with the League of Municipalities and the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition. There are 8 cities, I think, in North Carolina who have assistants on their own in the General Assembly like you have. A couple cities have staff people that do it, Wilmington, Charlotte. Most of the others have done what you have done. You have brought in somebody like me to assist you with these matters. And we try to work together on those things that affect more than just the one city that each of us represents. And working with the League and the Metro Coalition, I think we had some success this year on some of the items, and you can see some of those listed there, things that we think went fairly well during this session. Near the bottom of that list, there's some things that did not go well, and I know you're aware of them, but I wanted to just, again, remind you that the business privilege tax is set to expire next year. What we have been told by those who advocated the expiration of that tax is that it will be replaced by some other source of revenue. The one most often mentioned is broadening and expanding the sales tax, with local government getting a greater share of it. But I can't say that without saying that there was an effort to do that early in the 2013 session, and the bill that was introduced to do that was met with great opposition in the legislature. So I'm not convinced that that's going to be the answer. But what we do need to do is make sure that we get to work as soon as possible trying to help the legislature identify a way to make up that tax. I know it's going to cost the city of Asheville well over $1 million in lost revenue by that act of the General Assembly. Other things that didn't go well, not just for Asheville but for every other city, is the sunsetting of the historic rehabilitation tax credits. I think you've made good use of those here. A lot of other cities have also done that very well. Many of you have probably been to American Tobacco, all those buildings in Durham. That's how that redevelopment project was done, using these tax credits. The legislature also failed to extend the tax credits to the film industry like we have had in the past. They did do a small, I think it's a $10 million grant fund, but from what I understand, talking with the folks in the film industry, that still puts a lot of the projects that we're accustomed to having in North Carolina in danger, and those are great sources of revenue, jobs, and economic development. in a lot of municipalities around the state. Wilmington obviously is going to be the biggest hit. Charlotte takes a big hit. You'll take a hit in Asheville. Raleigh takes a hit. So that's another issue, along with the historic rehabilitation tax credits, that we need to try to find a way to restore those in the upcoming 2015 session. On page 2, there are a few matters that were unique to Asheville. Local legislation that had bipartisan support among your delegation, bills that were introduced and generally went through with very little debate, no opposition, and things that the city needed to have done. Having a group of local bills like this where you had bipartisan support helped the city, and the way people view you there, and your ability to sit down and cooperate and make things happen. So we need to keep trying to look for issues like this that we can work on in the upcoming session as well. I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the matters that are going to be coming up in 2015. I've already mentioned something has to be done to protect your revenue that's going to be lost from the elimination of the business privilege tax, the reenactment of the tax credits. You've got some other issues that you've been discussing for some time, the issue of doing something to try to help deter the graffiti problem that you have here in Asheville. What is the proper way to do that? Funding issues. A lot of what's happening with this reevaluation of roles and functions has a lot to do with funding. For transportation, they've even started talking about education. Should we be moving some of the education funding out to local government? A lot of people think, well, that's just going to be counties, but don't be so sure about what they may be moving out. One of the things that we're going to need to do is, and I'll be working with Alex on this, is that when the legislature adjourned in the summer of 2013, when they ended their long session, they created about 75 study committees to look at issues in the interim before the legislature came back in either the short session of 2014 and the long session of 2015. About a third of those were study committees that involved local government and things that you do here in local government. Some of those came up in the 2014 session and were handled. But there are a lot of things that are still out there. And what Alex and I will be doing now that the session's over, we can sit down and look at everything that came up and was dealt with in 2014 and prepare for you a list of the things that are still left hanging out there from those study committees that are likely to or may come up in the 2015 session. And I think the mayor is going to talk to you about advocacy proposals that will be shared with the League of Municipalities, and I'll certainly be here to contribute anything I need to with that. I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody has about this past session, what's happened, and what we're doing to start getting ready for 2015. So, Mayor?
Are there any questions?
I'd like to
yes.
comment.
Yes.
Jack, I'm not sure if you have appeared in open session here before. You've visited with us in small groups and in Raleigh when we've traveled over there, but just a little more introduction. You were a former North Carolina Court of Appeals judge, and you served for 8 years, I think?
12.
12 years
I'm older than I look.
And the governor, as the staff legal counsel to Governor Hunt. And so this is a man that is extremely experienced in the ways of Raleigh. This council, under Esther's, Mayor Mannheimer's leadership, set out a year ago to make sure that we became more active and more engaged in Raleigh And we've done that in a couple ways. We've worked with Jack and his son Jackson, who is here, and other advisors. We've worked closely with the North Carolina League of Municipalities. We have individually engaged directly with our own legislative delegation, much more than we had in years past. And these are actually, as Jack points out, these are some of the most difficult times for municipalities in a long, long time in this state. And I just want to make sure that the public understands how seriously this council takes this duty. As Mr. Kazort points out, North Carolina being a Dillon's Rule state, the legislature does have authority over every single action that a municipality takes and a city council can do. So it's even more important in this state and this time to have these relationships and to work together collaboratively. And again, I just want to make sure that folks watching and paying attention to this understand that, as we said we would do months ago, we have increasingly gotten better at this, I think, and we're very committed, and I appreciate your help, Jack.
Thank you, Councilman, and it's making a difference. I can tell the difference in Raleigh, in the way you're perceived and your ability to get things done. And it all comes back to right here. You know, Tip O'Neill or somebody said all politics are local, and that's true. And so it's been a pleasure to work with you, and what you're doing here, especially your outreach and work with the delegation, is making a lot of difference. It really is.
Does anyone, thank you for highlighting that and drawing attention. I think sometimes we're in the thick of it, and there are a lot of, when the session's happening, there are a lot of day-to-day communications. Things are moving very quickly. Another group that weighs in for cities is the Metro Mayors, and they have their own information sharing and advocacy program that we're looped into as well. And on that note, we do have kind of a time crunch here on our deadline, because the session just ended, but the League of Municipalities is busy putting together their agenda for the next session, and they have a whole vetting process they work through, so they would like to have our list of items by Friday.
Ordinarily, you would have more time, but this year it just didn't work out.
And so this is just for purposes of giving a list to the League of Municipalities, but we will, through the Governance Committee, do what we talked about doing last year, which is developing our agenda and then also some broad policy positions about general concepts, fiscal integrity, enterprise funds, regionalization of utilities, zoning, the sorts of things that we want to have more comprehensive statements about, because I think what we saw in this last session is that, a bill, well, first of all, the longer the legislature's in session, the more likely strange provisions are going to pop up at any moment in any committee meeting. And so we saw suddenly amendments to bills like a proposal that cities couldn't regulate the removal of trees. Well, that's something that most cities regulate, so we weren't expecting that. And I think rather than trying to anticipate every single item that might come down the pipeline, we need to be able to state broadly our position on whole matters, so that it's something that Jack has when he's walking around the legislature advocating for us, or when one of these items comes up in committee, because he quickly needs to know what our position is on different things. And we will have some variation from other cities just due to each city's uniqueness. So with that said, there is a second document at your seat. Alex, do you want to come up and talk to us a little? I'm putting you on the spot. Are you ready to do that? And this was put together because we had a conference call with the League, but the Vice Mayor Hunt and I were on that call, and our city manager and our city attorney, and Alex was there as well, and Mr. Kazort, who's here, was as well, and tried to get a sense of what the League was anticipating trying to tackle, and what kinds of things they were expecting from us, and how we could participate in this process meaningfully. So this isn't, I will say that as we move through the governance committee and kind of fine-tune our legislative agenda, there may be some changes here, but just to meet this very quick deadline the league is working with, we wanted to have something and have you all look at it. So Alex, if you want to talk about it.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Alex Carmichael. I'm the Executive Assistant to the Assistant City Manager. This document that you have in front of you is a list of proposals to the League of Municipalities, as the Mayor has stated. They were put together, some of them based on items that are left over from the 2013 session, from the short session, from comments that were made by legislators in Raleigh, as issues that may come up in the long session. So there are 10 statements. It's a front and back document, so please don't miss that. And the first one is broadly stormwater, preserve municipal authority to regulate environmental standards such as erosion control or stormwater quality. The second item would be municipal operations, support measures which maximize the ability of local governments to provide and manage high-quality services to meet the needs of the community. This includes, but is not limited to, utilities, enterprise funds, etc. The third one would be the regulation of car-sharing services, grant municipalities the authority to regulate digital dispatching services such as Uber. Aesthetic and design controls would be the fourth item. Preserve municipal ability to regulate design and aesthetic controls in historic districts. Preserve municipal fiscal health would be the next item. Identify means to generate increased revenues for public, education, and transportation infrastructure without impacting municipalities' dwindling revenue. The next item, restore lost revenue. Restore revenue lost due to the repeal of the Privileged License Tax Authority, which Jack mentioned earlier. The next item would be restore economic development incentives with impact on local economies, restore programs such as the film tax credits and historic building rehabilitation tax credits. The next item, coal ash. We saw a bill that came through at the end of the session. We'd like to see that stronger. Continue to seek legislation that strengthens the requirements for the appropriate cleanup and disposal of coal ash and coal ash ponds that is equitable to ratepayers. Graffiti vandalism, seek to strengthen and or clarify current state law to more effectively deter and punish perpetrators who damage property, such as by committing acts of graffiti vandalism through graffiti. And then the final item, clarify laws related to public toplessness, clarify laws related to public toplessness, including but not limited to clarification of the indecent exposure law, NCGS 14-190.9.
Yeah.
And so these are items that we put together as areas where we might want to adopt as policy principles to submit to the League of Municipality, which is, as the Mayor stated, the deadline for that is the end of this month. And this would go through their process. The board for the League of Municipalities would address these in October in their October meeting, and then the full membership would vote on them in December, and that would give their legislative lobbyists marching orders and instructions for going into the long session.
And I think Councilman Pelley and Councilman Hunt, last time we went down, and when they do the vote, and that's pretty interesting, they have representatives from all the cities and decide what makes the list and what doesn't. And not all of the items we included the last time made the list, but a good many of them. And the taking of the Asheville City water system was the highest vote received for the entire state vote on the legislative agenda for the league. So that was a great moment. And I would highlight for you on bullet point number 3, two things. Uber, representatives of Uber, the car sharing, I guess they call it car sharing, program, have reached out to me and let me know they're coming to Asheville, or they've come to Asheville. I don't know if anyone's used Uber yet. And we learned that while cities can regulate taxi services, they cannot, under the current legal scheme in North Carolina, regulate services like Uber, which is this reference to digital dispatching services. That's what that means. So the league is very interested in promoting a platform that at least allows cities to regulate these types of services if they choose to. I'm not sure yet where we're going to fall on that. We haven't yet examined that issue for Asheville. That may not be something of concern to us, or we may decide we want to participate in that. But in any event, that just an explanation. That was kind of a new one compared to the rest of the items on this list. Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions? Yes.
First of all, kudos, because it was your advocacy that got the Asheville water issue to the top of that list, and so thank you so much for being there and doing that. And in regards to that, I wondered if it might be appropriate for this council to be able to send a letter of thanks to all of those municipalities who got behind us in that effort, and as well as to the League for their willingness to stand with us in that fight. In regards to this list, this looks great, and it's really nice to have Jack and Jackson and Alex all working on this stuff. In regards to the graffiti item, I just wanted to make a clarification that I personally am not seeking that this crime be made a felony, that it needs to remain a misdemeanor, and I would hope that any sort of advocacy position that we'd like to take there would clarify that.
On graffiti. You're talking about on graffiti, yes. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Yeah. No.
Well, I would add to that I hope the legislature continues to be wise enough to ignore Representative Moffitt's attempt to make toplessness a felony. That's ludicrous in the extreme.
We're going to see how many times we can say that word during this meeting.
Yeah, really. It gets front page coverage.
Yeah. Right. All right, so can we, this is sort of informal but formal because we need to send this on to the League Friday, but again, we're going to be able to revisit it and fine-tune and work through our formal legislative agenda. So if we all want to maybe just nod.
Well, one other thing I would stick in, and I know I'm impolitic, but I think we're being awfully gentle when we say continue to seek legislation that strengthens the requirements for the appropriate cleanup. I think we should be demanding cleanup of the ash ponds. I don't think that's a seeking some better answer. I think it's horrendous that the legislature managed to walk away from the worst environmental disaster in ages in this state and do nothing in this session. I mean, I think we should be demanding that they do something, but that's impolitic, I know.
We adopted a resolution on coal ash that's more thorough than this. Maybe we could attach our resolution to this advocacy proposal. So maybe on coal ash, C resolution, something along those lines, which is much more detailed and probably stronger than this wording.
Thank you.
And I would highlight, in terms of the details that we're discussing here, the way this process will go, there'll be policy positions negotiated and laid out in a structured way through a series of meetings culminating in December with the League of Municipalities. And we intend to remain active there, both with staff and members of council. And there will be opportunities to flesh out more detail as we work with other cities for that. So this is good guidance, and we'll continue to think about the details in all these.
Okay. Are we good to move forward with this?
Mayor,
I keep trying to move us forward.
Jack, you might recall, I think I heard the folks at the League suggest that if we adopt by resolution a set of stances like this, that they like to see a voted on resolution at this level.
I think that's correct. And it's also correct, as you pointed out, there will be opportunities to fine-tune this as we go through the process. The important thing now is to get these ideas in front of them to be a part of that process. I think a resolution would be the better way to do it.
Mayor, I think there is a check mark on their form that says, were these adopted by a voted resolution of the council? So I'd like to move that we adopt these with that one amendment about attaching the coal ash resolution.
All right, there's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second. And the graffiti.
And with the noting the graffiti not becoming a felony.
Yes.
All right. Any
Second.
other questions or comment? All right. Anyone wishing to, now that we have a motion, anyone wishing to provide comment on this issue? On this motion? All right. All those in favor?
I would like to just say that maybe next year we can get the league's timing, and this just feels really fast to me, and it was just put in front of us, and there was no opportunity for public comment for a resolution, and they didn't get it, so I guess I would just ask, not that I have any problems with this, but, you know, I read it in the last 2 minutes, that maybe next year we can work on our process and understand the timing of the league's needs.
And Councilwoman Whistler, I think some of this had to do with the fact that the short session became a not so short session, and waiting for them to wrap up kind of took up more of the time and attention than hopefully it will in the future. I'd also like to point out that the more that we can align with the Chamber's legislative agenda, the better as well.
Yeah, and I would expect that the Chamber, who doesn't have to operate on the league's timing, will adopt a legislative agenda for the session as well. That'll be more in line with the timing on our legislative agenda, and I would imagine we'll do that. So, noted. Yeah, and if the legislature could be a little more timely, you tell them to adjourn. I think I was there on the other one that was the longest short session. Actually, we adjourned in October, if I recall. So, yes.
In terms of process, we were just talking about this. It's entirely possible to leave this as a motion, communicate your position now with a letter to the league, and save the resolution of a formal policy till later at your choice.
Since I brought it up, I am fine with the resolution. I'm just talking about process next year. So unless other council members have a different view, I'm ready to vote on this.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you for traveling down here, or over here, up here this evening. We appreciate it. All right. We have 2 items on our public hearing agenda. The first, are we ready? We're ready? Is a public hearing to consider a land use incentive grant agreement for 146 Roberts Street, Rad Lofts. Kathy Ball is here to make the presentation.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. As the Mayor has stated, the purpose of tonight is for Council to hear and make a decision about a land use incentive grant for the Rad Lofts project in the River Arts District. This project consists, it is a mixed-use development that consists of approximately 2.88 acres. The project has 209 residential units, 144 of those being one-bedroom units, and 65 being two-bedroom apartments. There is an additional 48,000 square foot of retail and commercial space in the project. The project also includes a parking garage that has approximately 350 parking spaces. 220 of those are for the residential units, and 136 is for the commercial and retail space for the project. One of the things I wanted to cover is that we have been, as a team with the city, working with the developer on this project to be able to identify ways that we can partner on the project in order to help bring workforce and affordable housing as well as mixed use into the River Arts District. So I wanted to kind of outline what some of those were before we move into the land use incentive grant. So the first one of those, council has already taken action on, and that action that council took, this is what the project would look like. It's a rendering of the project with this area being Klingman Avenue and this being Robert Street. And there is entrance into the parking garage. So the first of those that I wanted to cover is council approved in October of 2013 a conditional use permit for the project. The property was put under urban place zoning, and as part of that project there was parking allowed in the numbers that you see above, with 338 spaces in the parking deck, 24 spaces off-site in an adjacent parking lot, surface parking lot, and then 15 new on-street parking spaces. According to our Unified Development Ordinance, if that off-street parking is, or on-street parking is new, then 75% of that number can be counted toward the developer's responsibility. So in this case, 11 of those spaces for a total of 377. And I just point out that this was a part of what was in the package and approved in October of 2013. The required parking for this project under urban place zoning is that it would require 210 parking spaces for residential, 106 for retail, and then 33 for the office space, for a total of 350 spaces, approximately. The other one I want to speak to is the Brownfields grant. This is a state grant, and for any project that successfully comes in and clears up and redevelops a brownfield, they're eligible for grants in the amount of their taxes for the first 5 years from both the city and the county. So the first year they're eligible, and this does require that they comply with a number of different monitoring, cleanup reports, and they have to submit those to the state and have it inspected in order to qualify. But the first year it's a 90% grant of the taxes, and then you can see the scale, the descending scale after that. We have been trying to identify on this project infrastructure improvements that are within the right-of-way or have public purpose. I know that it's hard to see this. I show this to say that we have been working with the developer on this probably since January, and it was last modified in May. But as part of this infrastructure partnership, we have identified what the public purpose is in working with the developer on this project. The two that you see highlighted, or I shouldn't say not just those two, but one of the things that, or the three that we wanted to cover, quiet zone, as of effective probably 3 months ago, Depot Street has a quiet zone. The cost of that was $30,000. The city paid half of that amount, and that has already been paid to the developer, or to the developer. Storm drainage improvements, there is a very large storm drain that runs under the property that drains the area all the way up to Hilliard Street, all of Klingman Avenue, and then potentially undergrounding utilities, although we're not sure that that's going to be able to happen on this project, for a total of approximately $360,000. I wanted to mention the off-street parking. This is something that at this point we're not prepared to make a recommendation to council on. We're having discussions with the developer. This is, when I mentioned earlier, these 24 spaces that were off-site that were a surface parking lot. This is the location of that parking. The developer needs to have a dumpster and some handicap spaces on that location. We have not reached an agreement on the cost of the land for this property. And so again, I just say that this is something that we're working on right now. There would be a cost to construct the parking there and then operating, and we would receive some revenues from that. So now we're moving to this, the issue at hand that you're having a public hearing on tonight, the Land Use Incentive Grant. In order to be eligible for the Land Use Incentive Grant, there has to be an eligibility requirement. This project has met the eligibility requirement in terms of these 3 bullets that you see here. Equity in the project, Energy Star certified, and within 1/8 of a mile of a transportation corridor. Specifically, the public benefit is that the project is providing 198 workforce housing units, 11 of those are affordable housing units. The split between those is a 95-5%. So all of the units will be either workforce or affordable, with the workforce being 95%. It is proposed to be Energy Star certified. 20% of the project is not residential. It would receive under the policy a sustainability bonus and a brownfield redevelopment. The way that the policy works out is that when applied specifically to this project, the workforce housing units would receive a score of 15 points. The affordable housing, because it's not at least 10%, receives 0 points, and then you can read the points from that on further down, for a total of 35 points. The policy allows the City Council to make, and I'll cover that in just a second, to make some judgments on what they want that to be. The developer is requesting for the workforce housing an additional 5 points for a total of 20 points, and for the affordable housing is requesting 10 additional points. So they're under the strict guidelines of the policy, it is 0 points. So the developer is requesting 50 points. The way these points correlate to the amount of the grant is that for each 10 points, there would be a rebate after the project is complete, there would be a rebate to the property, the developer, in the amount of the taxes, the additional taxes that they pay on the project. So for 50 points, that would be 5 years worth of rebated or granted amounts in the amount of what they pay in their property taxes. So as I mentioned earlier, in addition to the policy allows for a reduction in permitting fees. So for every 10 points that are awarded through the policy, that would be a 10% reduction in the permitting fee. And 10% in this case of the project is approximately $8,200. So whether council approves nothing, 35%, or 50% would change the amount of the number that you see there in that increment. And as I mentioned earlier, while there is a policy that gives guidelines and has recommendations for a point system, the policy also says that the City Council is authorized to choose to make those numbers either higher or lower depending on how they value the project as being important to meeting City Council's goals. City staff have put together basically some of the things that we see that this project brings forward, and we wanted to mention those in this presentation. There is approximately a $38 million construction investment, 300 or more jobs during construction, approximately $16 million in direct wages to construction workers. And then from a permanent standpoint, it would be adding 209 rental residential units, permanent housing stock in the city limits. And when we say locationally efficient, what we are referring to there is that folks who live in that area should have a lower transportation cost because they're able to live and work closer together and they're not having to spend as much money on gas or transportation. 5% of the units are affordable, 95% workforce, 50 new permanent jobs, $2 million or more annually into the local economy, and that this area specifically, tonight you all already set the public hearing for a municipal service district, and this project is within the River Municipal Service District that you approved. So it is in a targeted development area. The two scenarios that you see here in graphic form are, if you look at the bottom, it has the years, and the amount of money is along the y-axis. I think so. The blue is the city brownfield. So as I mentioned earlier, that is a requirement if they meet that state mandate that the city provide a grant in the amount of the first year 90% with that descending scale. The red, if council chose to approve a 35-point system, the red would be the annual amount that the developer would get in grants for after they performed, and then the green would be the developer's responsibility. The way that number changes, so you saw at the top that that's approximately $510,000. Then at 50 points, it's $725,000. And then you see that in year 9, the city's would be making the last payments. So that is the end of the presentation, and you're welcome to open the public hearing or ask questions.
I just had a question on the, you said make payments, just to review, we're talking about a tax grant where the increased property tax revenue is remitted back to the property owner.
Yeah, technically it's a grant in the amount of the increase in the amount that they pay in their property taxes.
And under the Brownsfield program, I know the city is required under state law to provide the tax grant. Is the county as well? There's a portion the county does as well? Okay.
The county has to provide the same scale at 90 and descending for what they receive.
And that's not reflected
that is not.
on there. We're just dealing with the city portion. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have one for Kathy. Kathy, could you clarify the parking, how much public parking will be available?
I can. I will try to. I know it was a little bit confusing because just like with any project, the numbers change as you move further along in the design. But in October of 2013, council approved 338 spaces. There was a total of 377. The plans that we received have a total of approximately 350.
So the CZ asked for how many?
It was just because of the way their plans were. It did not require that many, but at the time they did their plans, and this has been a similar thing that has happened when we have done work. At the time that the plans came through, it was anticipated to have 377. Now, the developer may have additional information that they can provide. I believe this 349, this is what was approved. So if you take the 338 plus 11 and you take out the 24 spaces that are adjacent to it, then you would come up with that 349. So it would appear if they built the off-site parking that there would be an additional 24 parking spaces above and beyond what's required for their conditional zoning. So this 377 is 24 more than the 349 that's required.
How many are public, Kathy? How many will be available to the public?
So the public can go in and use the parking garage, but the developer is required to build them for the uses that they have gotten their approval on. So there's retail and commercial, but anybody who wanted to go down there and shop and go to a different establishment could use the parking and pay for it and go in and use it. But the developer is required to build these spaces in order to have the square footage of retail and commercial space. It gets a little confusing because they're still open to the public.
And then the 24 spaces are kind of, we're not certain about right now. It may not come to be because of the dumpster location and that.
Yeah, and if you would like the developer to address the status of those, we have just been in negotiations, but he may be able to address the status of those better than I.
Are there other questions before Kathy sits down and we hear from the developer? Sure? Going once, going twice? Okay. Mr. Pilos, if you and your team want to come up, then...
Ms. Mayor, everybody, I'm doing what I said, Gordon. I said I'd come back and tell you what it would cost, and that's what I've done. Keep in mind, I ran the numbers. I've worked with Jeff Stroninger for 2 months crunching numbers, been very transparent. and explained to your subcommittee of affordable housing the valuation and the cash flow. The real, I need to get the 50 points, guys, and the real consequence is less about the affordable housing, because I can charge more money and pay the taxes on the residential, the apartments, but I'm also using that money to help subsidize these small business rents. You just can't build a parking garage and new Class A commercial in the River District or downtown or anywhere else and rent it for $23, $24 a foot. The math just doesn't work. So I'm using part of these taxes to help keep the small business rents lower. That's not part of the program. I just want to let you know how the math works out, that there's a benefit that goes beyond affordable housing. It's also the small local businesses that are going to go in there benefit from this, number one. Number two, if I was in a central business district, I wouldn't have any parking requirement. And we could, the entire parking garage could be available, but because we're outside of the CBD and there's not an equivalent zoning, satellite zoning to be done down there, I got the highest density I could get for down in the RAD. And along with that comes, you know, the parking requirement. But the program is 138 spaces are available to the public on an hourly basis, $1 an hour. Secure garage, much like your municipal garages. As far as the parking lot across the street, I've told Kathy, if you take what we're paying for the property, and again, it's public record and the city's got all the numbers, all I did was prorate it out and take the road frontage on Robert Street and say, okay, I'll give you this land at the cost I'm paying for it. They want to offer $100,000 less than we're paying. I can't do that. I need the 50%, or 50 points. If we can make the numbers work and you guys think it's in the best interest of the submarket, and I think it is, we're trying to bow to a lot of gods here, give the area the parking, bring more small businesses downtown, promote the RAD, bring the residential, do what I can in the way of affordable housing, the low-income housing, and then limit ourselves on the workforce. Let me tell you the position that it puts me or any other developer in. I have to, basically I'm the CEO of a tech startup that is going to the market and saying, I'm not going to allow our stock to go more than $10 a share. Okay, in order to attract capital in doing that, there's got to be some trade-off. We've run the math. The math is what it is. It equaled 50 points in Luigi. Luigi is the best vehicle you have for incentives. I mean, it's the closest thing we can come as a program to make the numbers work. But I have to offset, point blank period, capping the value of the property for the next decade, as well as capping the income stream. And the trade-off that we came up with equal being 15 points higher than the city's current program. But they're ancillary stuff. You got the quiet zone that benefited the neighborhood. Parking down there is a crisis today. Bringing more small businesses that are retail-oriented will draw more tourist traffic down there. I'm doing a neighborhood grocery store that simply we have to subsidize because they can't afford to pay the kind of rents, even with this, that it takes to construct. So I promised Gordon I'd come back with a number. 9 months later, I'm coming back. This is the best we can do. I offered it up. I hope you approve it. It'll help us move forward with this thing, and we'd be happy to accommodate, the requirements for the next decade. Any questions?
Questions? Any questions? Okay.
Oh, one discrepancy, Harry, and I just noticed this. I don't know, maybe that doesn't inform this discussion, but you were saying this is $50 million of investment. Staff was saying it was 38. What's the discrepancy?
Oh, hard costs versus soft costs, the existing land value. The sticks and bricks are going to be 38 to 40 million bucks. Bank financing, you guys know you have to float bonds all the time. The lawyers, the interest, construction interest, permanent loan financing, blah, 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 blah. It's big bucks. And about $10 million on a project this size. Engineers, architects, environmental consultants, attorneys. It is what it is.
So the period of time that a development like this commits to affordable and workforce is how long?
It's 10 years.
So the same period of the...
Yeah, and that's where part of this, the problem with the current policy is the math just doesn't work, certainly for us, is we're devaluing, not only are we giving up rent that otherwise could be recognized, and we're capping it, okay, for the future, we're also devaluing the property, which means when you go to sell it 6, 7, 9 years from now, the new guy is inheriting those restrictions. Therefore, it's devalued. And that's, you know, it is what it is. It's a program that you've got. I can make the numbers work at 50 points. I cannot make them work at 35. And I'm very, very concerned about the impact on the small businesses. They're really good local established businesses that this will be their second step. And we've been very, I don't want to say picky, but we tried to target the type of businesses that will complement the existing businesses in the RAD. There's not going to be a coffee shop or a sandwich shop in RAD Lost because we've got Cleveland Cafe. I've turned down 4. We're putting in co-work space on the second floor that should increase daily activity and people working down the RAD because it's going to be awesome office space. Neighborhood grocery store because they really need that. And then restaurants that do not directly compete with the existing restaurant. No pizzeria. So I've been as thoughtful as I can be, and when you limit yourself, I'm not going to take that. We're not just chasing dollars here. We're trying to create a good product that complements it. And to hold the rents down, we need the 50 points.
Okay, any other questions?
Question. Harry, you mentioned the neighborhood grocery store, and I might have heard that before, but maybe not. Is there a tenant that you have lined up for that?
I've got 5 LOIs I'm meeting with tomorrow, letters of intent. One of them, it's the West Corner Market. Roseanne and I go way back. This will be their second store. It's a great organic neighborhood grocery store that'll support that part of West Asheville as well as that whole district down there.
Great.
It's a great fit. I've been chasing her for a year. Finally got her to say yes. And then we have a sushi, small sushi chef restaurant going in, a novelty store, a jewelry and tattoo store, novelty store, and we got the co-work space done, and I'm trying to find the right fit for my big restaurant, The Anchor, that's right on the corner. It's a very big food and beverage operation, and we really need to get it right. So it's a little bit like, I guess, internet dating or something. I'm trying to be very picky on who we put in there to make sure, A, we don't stomp on the guys that are down there and help create the market that it is today, but also, you know, take it to the next level. And I'm talking to a couple of restaurants right now, but I'm not sure who we're going to go with yet. So I have retailers signed, ready to go in. And this helps them. I mean, it's that simple.
And back to the grocery store, is it your view that the grocery store is important to make the entire complex work?
I think so. I think you're going to create a good neighborhood anchor. You know, the neighborhood grocery store goes back, over 100 years. The neighborhood pub is another component, you know. They're just having a workspace there where people can go downstairs or go across the street or ride a bike a couple blocks and go to work. All those things create the kind of synergy that I envision for the project, and I think those are the kind of components that make it special. You know, besides architecture and signage and things like that, it's getting the right mix. We're not going to get national tenants. We're not chasing them. It's made my financing much more difficult. We're not Biltmore Farms. The building is going to be every bit as quality as what you see out of Biltmore Park. Promise. In many ways better. But I can't charge those kind of prices and keep it local. Thus, this helps. It's just mathematics to me. I have got people signed up, and a little bit worried when I found out they were going to recommend 35 and not 50 today, given that I've already signed some agreements with some folks. So.
Harry, on the retail, the other retail, the novelty, tattoo, talk about that a little bit.
They're good local tenants, been in business a long time. That's part of the modern culture. I don't have a tattoo on me.
I have no problem with that. I have a problem, though, if we put, it's one thing when you go down there and your money and you put retail space out. It's another thing when you go down there and we're partners with you. I don't want this to be a nuisance to that neighborhood or to the people. Some novelty and,
John,
tattoos are fine. I don't have a problem
I got
with that.
209 apartments upstairs that we've got to make it nice.
I do have some problems if it's a less than good neighbor for them. I'd be.
I'm trying to be.
Curious.
I'm being very picky to try and take a good moral road on this. It's a 21st century. These kids work in open office space. They're covered in tattoos.
Have no problem with that.
They have.
Our younger person.
Yeah, they have their ways and they do things a little different than your generation or mine.
Hey, no problem with that. But
I hear you. We won't be a problem. And none of my projects have ever contributed to the negative side of a neighborhood. If anything, I think we'll be cleaning it up. And one of the goals is to make it really safe, particularly at night. And I'm paying for 10-foot wide sidewalks, guys. I got utility costs that are pretty substantial. And we're complying with all that. It's going to be very, very nice, Jan. It's going to be very nice. And I'm going to charge as cheap as I can, given the incentives that I've got to get here tonight. I mean, we're going to utilize this as a tool to drive rents down. And without the tool, we're going to have to charge whatever the market will bear. I don't know how to be more straight about it.
Are there other questions? No? Just, are you guys discussing what kind of tattoo you would have done?
Jan needs.
Okay.
They're artists too,
hey, no, don't get me wrong. Tattoo part's fine. It's what goes in the other parts of it. It's very concerning. I mean, frankly, if we put something in there that good tattoo shop's a fine thing, but one that has got an underculture or overculture of drugs, of people playing loud music at night, that we're finding this is...
I'll shut them down long before you do, Jan. I mean, I promise we won't. We're not going to contribute to the delinquency of any neighborhood. And if one of our tenants do,
you're looking over your shoulder at residents that are living down there, and they
as far as menu, I don't have any music venues. As I understand it,
like music too, like it very much, but we're getting that pushed back right.
Yeah, we had looked at doing an underground club that's literally underground, kind of next to Klingman, because of the noise. I'm more sensitive to it than they are. I've got my future, my livelihood's relying on those people living upstairs. I've subsequently killed that. It's probably too little of a market share. I'm doing use store it. To be honest with you, we can do better with use store it, and everybody needs storage down there for kayaks and boats and bicycles, and has a lot less risk to it and less controversy than trying to stick a music venue in. So we're going with the use store.
Okay. All right, I want to open the public hearing unless there's any other questions for the developer. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Yes.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Timothy Sadler, and I want to take a moment to commend Harry Pilos. I've been observing this project, I think, for a year and a half now, by attending the River District meetings and various other meetings, and I've also gotten to know Harry out in the community, and really has kind of been the gold standard for developers in terms of developers that I've met. He has gone out and targeted amazing local businesses here in the community to be a part of his project. And when it comes to the incentives, I do think it's important to curb gentrification in Asheville. And while, you know, this isn't exactly getting at the biggest problems that we have, I do think it's a good step in the right direction. I also want to suggest to Mr. Pilos that with hiring construction for the project, that he look at implementing as much local workforce as possible, and particularly if he can look to include in the contract for construction working with Asheville Green Opportunities, to have that as part of the contract, I think would be a really great thing for the community. And the last thing I'd like to offer, you know, is if we're looking to incentivize this development, I think it is something to consider what we have coming down the pike with the Oak Street Commons. So, you know, if we're going to be stepping up for this project, please be mindful of the Hard to House project that's coming down the pike as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes. Mr. Worley. Recognize our former mayor, Mr. Worley. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I am Charles Worley. I want to start off, I am the attorney for Harry and for this project, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here on my own, and I'm here because Harry is a good friend. I've come to know him quite well, and I believe in him, and I believe in his project. I first became acquainted with Harry, not real closely, but certainly acquainted with him and watched his projects when I was on this council, and he developed a now very successful project on Cox Avenue, the redevelopment of the Sawyer building. And I think that has turned out very well and has certainly benefited all of Asheville. I'm here really to support Harry's request for the council to give, in its discretion, the extra 15 points he has requested for the land use incentive grant, giving him a total of 50 points. The project, as you've already heard, is a combination of workforce housing, affordable housing, retail space. It brings a problem-solving effort towards the brownfield that's there. It brings a parking garage, which will benefit the public as well as the residents and the retail users of the property. It's a combination of all of these things, and all of them are critical to the proper success of the project. It takes all of them to make the project work. It is a major improvement in the River Arch District, and it comes at a time, as you just heard from the previous speaker, where there's a growing concern over gentrification and affordability, particularly of rents in the River Arch District. The project meets the goals that are set forth, as you saw in the staff report that has been presented to you. It provides, among other goals that it meets, I want to emphasize the the economic growth and financial sustainability goal. In a project of this size, all of the components are critical. The budgets are tight, the costs are critical, and the numbers have to be crunched to the point where the project actually works. I said earlier that I know Harry. Harry is about as straight a shooter as I've ever run into with a developer. That's from my experience before I got to know him as close personally, and even more so after I have come to know him personally. I know of my own personal knowledge in another project in another city that didn't work out because of the economic downturn and things did not go well. He sustained some personal losses. He could have passed some of those personal losses on to some of his investors. He made absolutely certain his investors were made whole, and that's the character of the man that you're dealing with. In a quick summary, I would request that the council in its discretion award the extra 15 points for the land use incentive grant, and the project as he is presenting it is good for the RAD and it's good for Asheville. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. My name is Patty Torno. I am the chair of the Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission. However, I will not be speaking as such tonight. I would be speaking just as myself, as an individual, private individual. Just to give you a little bit of information about sort of what I hear from my constituency in the River Arts District. There is a great desire to see the big triangular hole in the middle of our neighborhood to come back to use. So from that perspective, there is a great desire to see that land stop being a graffiti pit and start being a functional part of our neighborhood again. So this project definitely answers that call. There is, however, a lot of concern about rents of studio space. This project does not bring any new studio space online, so that is a concern to consider. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on this specific project. I really am just taking this opportunity to bring some concerns to you just as you go forward in your work. The concern about affordable artist space, the concern about not enough parking in the district. We had hoped originally that this project was going to bring us 450 parking spaces, and that would have gone a long way to reduce the deficit that we're currently in. As it stands right now, there is some thinking that we actually lose spaces because on Klingman Avenue we have parking on, just unofficial parking on both sides of the street that we will lose half of. So there is some concern in the neighborhood about that. Mostly just we look forward to this council being proactive. We appreciate all of the work that council and city staff is doing to focus on the River Arts District with the TPDF fund grant application and a huge variety of other things. So whatever you decide about this, that's your council. Just know that I think we are going to see a bunch more projects. So maybe don't spend all your money on one project. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Council, this is the time where I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion, and let me ask Ms. Curran, Robin, is there a certain phrasing of the motion that would be preferred here, or is a general approach okay?
I think a general approach is okay as long as you're specific as to what, there's a lot of moving parts in this, as to what your motion contains.
Well, before I make the motion, a couple of comments, Mayor. First of all, I agree with Ms. Torno. We have to become more proactive. We just received a gentrification study and analysis that helps us understand what we're up against in regard to the gentrification trends. It's true that this project is likely to come online, and the city is eager to advance the RAD-TIP project and add lots of really interesting, helpful infrastructure down there that probably will have the effect of inspiring more developers to do things like this, and hopefully, you know, some include studio space and so on. But our policy approach to date does not make it so that a developer has to include policy, studio space, for instance. And I'm just not, I'm not sure exactly what future policy can evolve to really reinforce that. But I agree, Patty, we've got work to do, and I'm eager to see us do more. I also would just offer the comment, I plan to support this with the 50-point award. In doing that, I would emphasize this, we are not revising policy here. The land use incentive grant policy allows council latitude, given the circumstances at the moment, to adapt. And I think, you know, for me, there are many compelling aspects of this project beyond the specifics of the affordability and other features of the project. most important of which is the stimulus it'll provide in the River Arts District teamed with the infrastructure improvements we hope to make under RAD-TIP. And I think we may just be on the front edge of the real boom in the River Arts District that we've been waiting many, many years for. So with those comments, I'd like to move approval of a land use incentive grant for Rad Lofts LLC, authorizing the city manager to enter into a land use incentive program agreement consistent with the resolution provided by staff.
And attached to the agenda.
And attached to the agenda, that's the one.
Mayor?
Yes.
In spite of my line of questioning, I too favor the 50 points. I think that it's a great opportunity. We have some latitude, and the policy is not in concrete, but it's given us a good guideline to go with, and I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
To both agree and contradict, I have a promise from Harry Pilos, that when it proves out that this is too much parking, that the extra parking can be converted to studio spaces in the future. I think we're overbuilding parking given the future of automotive use in this country. So I'll support it, but I look forward to the day when a lot of those public spaces, or maybe even the ones dedicated to the apartments, because these people are going to be living and working nearby, a lot of them won't want cars. I mean, I think that's the future we're headed toward, and so I'm going to support it as well.
Are there any other? Yes.
So there's a few things I want to say about this. One is just to kind of put it in context in kind of our broader goals around River Arts District. There's been a lot of really great development down there that Mountain Housing Opportunities has spearheaded, with from Merritt Park to the condos to Glen Rock to the Glen Rock Depot that are affordable. And there's a lot of really great property owners down there who are doing their level best to set aside incubator space, set aside some affordable artist space. We did commission an alternatives to gentrification study, and those recommendations will be coming forward. The RAD-TIP program, which is a lot of transportation improvements down there, is going to be happening over the next several years. We've made an application to the Tourism Product Development Fund to be a riverfront destination, to create a riverfront destination down there, and that dovetails with a lot of our transportation goals. Obviously, New Belgium Brewery has become an amazing partner down there in the River District. So I say all this to say that there's a lot of moving parts that Harry Pilos is kind of stepping into to say, hey, I want to add to the mix down here. And what he's bringing is a pretty exceptional project and product, coming into a brownfield site and doing something that creates a couple hundred units of housing, and pulled a rabbit out of a hat and got the quiet zone going down there. So I just wanted to kind of express gratitude for that. And the comments that I'm going to be making shortly has less to do with your project, that has to do with kind of general policy going forward. One of the things that we've been doing as a council for the last several years is seeking to inject more predictability into approval processes and into our policy. We've overtly stated it again and again and again that we want to create more predictability. What we're talking about here, the difference between 35 points and 50 points, is the difference between $510,000, which is within the kind of orthodox policy, or 725, which is within council discretion, as you pointed out, Mr. Hunt, but it goes above and beyond kind of the points that would be awarded normally. So the proposal that I'd like to make tonight is I'm not against making sure that Harry gets this done and keeps those retail rents affordable and is able to get this stuff done. I'd like to see us stay within the 35 points for that $510K. And if council would like to see the other $215,000 go towards this project, that we pull it out of general fund. And keep the policy as it is. I think that if we're going to create predictability, let's do more of that. If we're saying, hey, We truly believe that this $215,000, in the light of a $52 million investment, is the make or break between these workforce and affordable housing and getting these parking spaces and getting this brownfield cleanup, then let's go ahead and put some cash on the table alongside the land use incentive grant. That's where I'm at. I won't be able to support the 50 points, although I certainly support the project.
Is there anyone else?
I will support the 35 points. I really sort of echo what Councilman Smith said, in the sense that the next person that comes up and asks council for money outside of the basic rules that we've set up, I'm just not sure that we've identified what those additional factors are that would justify the additional 15 points. So I would support 35, but I would support 35.
Sure. Gordon, I hear you, and I appreciate what you suggested here. For me, if we look at that difference, that $215,000 difference, the way I see it right now, I think we're deriving about $3,000 a year in property taxes, but when this property is developed, that's when we get to that much higher number there, and it's only then that the money would be rebated back to the developer over a period of years, 5 to 7 or 9 years. And so I think it's for me at least, it's a little bit different rather than asking us to allocate funds out of our operating budget. Again, this won't go back to the developer until such time as the improvements have been made. And for me, it weighs in to some extent that although there's much going on, or soon to go on in the River Arts District, we were prepared to provide incentives for New Belgium to locate there. And I know the land use incentive grant's a little bit different program, but I think this is a significant enough project to me that it warrants, maybe not next time, but this time for me it warrants the 50 points to allow this to go forward.
And I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I'm supportive of the motion for the 50 points. You know, I was on council along with several of you when we adopted this policy, and one of the things that was really difficult when we looked at this policy, and former Councilman Brownie Newman was really involved in it, was trying to know where the numbers would fall out. You know, when a developer puts pen to paper and starts preparing their pro forma, at what point would our incentive policy actually act as an incentive? Or would it not do it? You know, would the numbers not work and it wouldn't make sense to use our policy? And we weren't quite certain where that line was or what needed to be tweaked, so we built in some flexibility so that we could look at each project as it came forward and make adjustments as needed depending on the nature of the project, the mix of the project, and just how the different components of our policy fit into that project. And each one, whether they meet, you know, the policy as written, strictly as written, had to come to council to be approved. So for me, this is an important learning moment. This is the first time we're applying this policy. I was fairly certain when we adopted it that it was going to need to be tweaked and adjusted. The market changes, the cost of construction changes, what is affordable or workforce changes, the retail rental market changes. It's very difficult to draft a hard and fast policy that is relevant over time. So for me, this is a good effort, and Harry, we're putting a lot of faith in you in building this project. You have a great track record, and we're counting on you. And you've shown us a product that we think makes a lot of sense and is a good fit for the future of the River Arts District, which is great. There is a great future for the River Arts District, and this fits nicely into the long-term plan for the district, and it's something that this council is focused on, that being the River Arts District. So I don't know that anybody who proposes any project anywhere in Asheville would be up to snuff for us to apply this policy in this way, but on this project at this time in this place, I'm supportive of applying the policy to the tune of 50 points. And to be clear, again, so that folks understand how this works, this incentive grant is only rebated back to the developer once this project is brought online, and we are only talking about the increase in tax revenue that the land then produces. So it is essentially a rebate of the additional tax revenue that the project itself generates. People often get up here and say, well, I don't like that you wrote no one should ever write a check to anybody for building something in a city or a county or in your state, but that makes it sound like today, right now, we're taking this money out of the general fund and we're writing a check, and that's not at all how this project works. So I just thank you for indulging me, but I think there's always a misconception about how this actually works. So with that, I'm throwing my support behind it, and everyone's had their say, but maybe I have some more says.
Just
Yes.
wanted to make a comment that we were discussing this policy in HCD and made the decision to revisit it and revise it now that we have gotten some experience with it, and Robin's going to be helpful with us in that regard. So hopefully this can become a finer instrument.
Yep. Good. Anyone else? More? Yes. Okay. All right, we're ready for the voting part. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, was that good enough? You got it? Okay. All right, thank you very much. We have one other public hearing, a public hearing to consider an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance regarding the stormwater utility to provide 3 levels of tiering for detached single-family properties. And McCrae Coate is here. Sorry, we have a shuffling of persons in the audience.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. My name is McCrae Coates. I'm the Stormwater Services Manager here for the City of Asheville. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the wording amendment to the Stormwater Utility Billing Ordinance as it relates to the single-family tiered options. First, I wanted to just give you a brief history of how we got to the point where we're at now. And last year, as y'all know, we had a record-breaking year for rainfall. We had over 74 inches of rain in the Asheville area. During that time, during those intense rain events, we were able to go out and meet with a lot of citizens. And during those conversations with those citizens, they were asking us to increase the level of service we were providing from our stormwater utility. Some of the things they wanted us to do was look at more ditching operations, more preventative maintenance, more construction operations, more flood mitigation projects, and also more watershed assessments. So we took that information. We actually held a public hearing last November. And we talked about the vulnerabilities the City of Asheville had, and we got the same feedback from the citizens there also. So following up with that, we went into a contract with McGill Associates, and McGill is the folks who first looked at our stormwater utility ordinance. So we asked them to assess our utility fee where we're at, give a snapshot of, based on the information the citizens were asking for, and kind of assess where we're at. McGill provided us with some feedback. They provided a recommendation. We took that to the Finance Committee. Following that, the Finance Committee made the recommendation. We brought it to Council, and it was approved as part of the budget process back in June of this year. Part of that budget included the tiered system approach, and the recommendation was for 3 tiers. Our current ordinance has in there 2 tiers. So tonight, I would request that y'all approve the budget amendment, or the amendment to that ordinance. So certainly be glad to entertain any questions y'all may have.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, if not, I will open the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone wishing to make comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the ordinance amending Chapter 7 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Asheville regarding the stormwater utility to include a 3-tiered fee system.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that concludes the public hearings. Next, under new business, I will turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Our first item of business is to appoint members to the Civic Center Commission. Last month, we determined that there would be 3 finalists, if you will, to be considered for 2 open spots on that commission. So we have 2 open spots, the 3 people to choose from: Greg Duff, Yvonne Cook-Riley, or Bill Russell. And I think the way we have traditionally done this is to just have each council member indicate preferences, indicating the 2 that you would prefer. Maggie will keep score, and we'll see where we end up. And Gwen Whistler, how about we start at your end this time?
Okay. Sorry. Russell and Cook-Riley.
Oh, wait, we're doing Civic Center.
Isn't
Yeah, that's right.
Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah.
Duff and Russell.
Duff and Cook-Riley.
Okay. Duff and Russell.
Duff and Russell.
Russell and Cook-Riley.
Russell, Cook-Riley.
They were all 3 really good, too. That's
Mr. Russell received 6, and Mr. Duff and Ms. Cook-Riley each received 4. So if you will vote again
On those 2.
for just Duff and Cook-Riley.
So we'll start at the same end, and this time our preference is going to be choosing one of the 2, Greg Duff or Yvonne Cook-Riley.
Cook-Riley.
Duff.
Cook-Riley.
Duff.
Duff.
Cook-Riley.
Cook-Riley.
Okay, it's Cook-Riley 4-3. And on that, could we also reappoint Carol Linden when you're...
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. That we left that behind a couple of weeks ago.
Got it.
That appointment to this commission as well. I'm sorry I left that out, Maggie.
All right.
I guess that would be the committee's motion.
We'd already agreed to it, actually, right? Was there consensus on
On the reappointment.
July
We just
22nd?
waited to do it all together.
Yeah, I didn't include that in my original discussion. So we need an additional vote here, I think.
You can.
We're just voting on the one.
How about if I move to reappoint Ms. Leiden?
Second.
All those in favor, any further discussion?
I would like to say that she is an excellent commission member. She's actually works down there at times to get to feel what's going on, and just always there. She's just a great commissioner.
Great. Any other comment? We've got a motion, public comment. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Mayor, the Boards and Commissions Committee met this afternoon, and we have some recommendations in regard to interviews and appointments as follows. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Our committee recommends that the reappointment of Jaden Gurney, Brian Alexander, William Irby, and May Creedick, and that we interview Randall Barnett and Laura Simmelink for the additional remaining spot that would be open with those, assuming those appointments.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, if I could, I had the opportunity to speak with the chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and to have a look at one of the things that's really important for me when I'm looking at these candidates, which is record of attendance. And a couple of the candidates that y'all are recommending haven't had the greatest attendance. And so what I'd like to propose as an alternative motion would be to reappoint May Creedick and Jaden Gurney. May Creedick is Pisgah Legal, does a lot of work with homelessness prevention, obviously. Jaden Gurney works with the Housing Authority, a very important connection there between the committee and the Housing Authority, especially with all the work that we have going forward. And then to interview for the remaining 3 seats, William Irby, Brian Alexander, Laura Simmelink, James Mastrogiacomo, which is, I just wanted to say that name.
Yeah. That was
and Mr. Barnett.
I would accept it as an amendment to my motion, if that's what you're doing.
So the motion would be to appoint Creddick and Gurney and interview Irby, Alexander, Similink, Mastrogiacomo, got to say it again, Barnett.
Yes, that's my new motion. Or I guess you're seconding, or I'm seconding yours, whatever.
So you withdraw your first motion,
Yeah.
effectively. And the person that seconded, was that you, Mr. Felling?
I thought you seconded, but I will.
Yeah, okay. The two people responsible for the first motion have
Just make sure Maggie...
concurred.
I just need to
She's
be-
hanging with it. She always hangs with
We
it.
appointed Creddick and Gurney, and you're going to interview Brian Alexander, William Irby, James, and Randall Barnett?
And Laura Similink
Okay,
for the remaining 3 seats.
okay, got it.
That's right. And Maggie, those interviews will occur for those that are curious on...
I'll need to check,
I know it's a lot.
since we're interviewing so many more, I'm not sure
Okay.
what date it's going to be.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think we're square there. African American Heritage Commission, the committee recommends appointment tonight of Al Whitesides.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, comment on that from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Citizens Police Advisory Committee. Our committee recommends reappointment of Carol Hallstrom, Larry Holt, Alan Brailsford, and Debbie Applewhite.
So moved.
Second.
Further comment, discussion, public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Community Relations Council, the Boards and Commissions Committee recommends the appointment at long last of Fife Ashenbrenner.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Further discussion, public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Multimodal Transportation Commission. Our committee recommends the appointment of John Ridout, Steve Obremski, and Till Dose.
Second. I'll make that motion.
Motion and a
Second.
second. Public comment? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Tourism Development Authority, the committee recommends the reappointment of John Ellis.
So moved.
Second?
Question. I saw Katie Love was on the applicant list, but she doesn't appear to have a city address. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't get
It
that.
said Candler on there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah, she has recently moved to Camelot.
And I'd be really interested in having John back in to, maybe talk with him about his experience, but I'm interested in some of the other applicants as well and having a conversation with them. I don't know if there's any other council members who have that sense.
Well, we have a motion and a second. We're not yet to public comment.
I don't know if any other council members want to lengthen this process any, but I will offer that Councilman Hunt and I did meet with Mr. Ellis and discuss his reappointment and his potential representation of Asheville, or continuing representation of Asheville on the TDA. And with that, I will note that I cannot vote on this item because my firm actually represents the TDA, but I'll...
Do you need a motion to recuse?
I don't know if we need that. Probably couldn't hurt.
Motion to recuse.
I'll make that motion to recuse, Mayor.
Second.
So on that motion to recuse, let's hold a vote. All those in favor of the motion to recuse signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Vice Mayor,
Please.
I'm very supportive. I'm the liaison to TDA, and quite frankly, Mr. Ellis has done a great job. His leadership there, he served a term. He's been exemplary as far as an advocate of our needs. Not that he's pull special things out of the air or anything. He just recognizes a big picture of the city, and feel like he certainly deserves another term.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. There's been a suggestion that a different motion be allowed, but unless the motion and second is withdrawn, we go ahead and vote. But I would want to open it up to public comment before we do even that. Where are we on the motions? Where do they stand?
There's a motion and a second?
Yeah.
Yes. So, public comment. Mr. Sadler.
Good evening once again, City Council. I'm Timothy Sadler, and I first want to start by saying I attend the TDA meeting regularly, and Mr. Ellis is an outstanding leader here in the community. But I do want to strongly urge that you consider looking at a brewer here, an owner of a brewery. You know, beer is what people come to Asheville for, and there's no representation on that board amongst the brewing community. With that said, I hope that another council member sees the value in taking another month to see who might come to the table, an Oscar Wong, a Mike Rangel, and Rick Gumpy, I think would be absolutely outstanding. I mean, Wicked Weed is the #2 attraction for the city of Asheville at this point in time. So, thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Mayor, if there's 6 members of council who are prepared to move ahead with John Ellis, I'm not going to try to alter the process. Normally, when a council member would introduce the idea to have those interviews, that's normally a matter of course. But if 6 council members here tonight are settled on John Ellis, I'm not trying to derail that process. That being said, Ms. Rebecca Hecht and Mr. Stamps and Katie Button and Mr. Whalen, these are all incredible people involved in our tourism industry who are eager to become involved. And we can all kind of explain to them how we came to this decision, but I feel some regret that we won't have the opportunity to get to know them better.
Thank you. And I agree with you about the quality of this field of candidates. I intend to support Mr. Ellis's reappointment. I also kind of like Mr. Sadler's idea that, a brewer on this might be great. To that point, Tim, I would remind that, these processes are advertised well in advance. There's an open application period. I would encourage you or anyone to solicit candidates early at the proper time and not at the very end of the process. But having said that, I agree, Gordon, that the quality of this field of candidates is extraordinary. I have the sense that there may be, orientation toward voting tonight. Any further discussion? Okay. Any further public comment? None. All those in favor of the reappointment of John Ellis, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Well, that wraps it up.
All right. I have 2 folks signed up to speak. The first is Judy Strong.
Hi, my name is Judy Strong. I would like to present some concerns I have about financial things that are being spent, money that we're committed to right now. We are going to spend $309,000 more for the intake tower. We are spending $500,000 for Saturday and Sunday bus transportation that I don't know is fiscally sound. We have close to $250,000 for garbage pickup downtown. I walk downtown and people are still putting garbage out in front of their store. Close to $250,000 for the graffiti cleanup, and I'm not sure if that's going to be preventive or not, because there are paints that will decrease the cost of doing that. The Riverside stump dump that has a 2-year contract for $194,000 when we deliver the leaves and the branches, and they get to process it, and they get to sell the mulch afterwards. When Danny's Dumpsters gets, I don't know how much, and they don't ask for any remuneration on our part. There are other things like this $215,000 that you just committed, increase for the future. I don't know if you all keep track of all the things that you spend money on that are not valid right now. I don't know. Look, I'm a grandmother. I'm the grandmother of 6. I don't understand everything that you all do. I don't understand. I mean, I saw the dreams. I read all your document, all the things that you put out for this meeting. They're great dreams, but I want it to be fiscally responsible. I don't want to be put onto my grandchildren the cost of mistakes that we make today because we're not fiscally responsible. I have other things that and the other concern I have is that I want the police department to be well-funded. I want them to have the protective garments that they need. I want them to have those cameras so they can protect themselves. I think that if you were to poll anybody in this community and ask them what the one thing that they really want is, they want to feel safe in their home. So more policemen, but with well outfitted, getting all the gear that they need, as well as those cameras. I think those are the things that I'm willing to pay for, and I don't want to straddle my kids with expenses that I arbitrarily put out and that I could not do better, that I could not figure out a way to make the cost less. So that's my point. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Maggie, can you reset the, yeah. The second person I have signed up to speak is Timothy Sadler.
Good evening once again, City Council. I'm Timothy Sadler, and I am here to commend the Chief of Police and APD on, I think it's been a couple of years now since the new administration there, and I think we're doing a great job at strengthening relationships between the general public and law enforcement community here. Now, with that said, we still have decades of walking back to do, where all perceptions, have been embedded in people's consciousness, and have a couple of thoughts on how we could do better. And I brought this up at Public Safety, and part of that idea is a plainclothes initiative where police officers spend time in the community just as a citizen and let folks get to know them on that level. Not only that, but the police officers get to know the folks as people. And while this next piece has no bearing directly on the city, I think it would go a long way in strengthening perception amongst the general public. And the fact that our county has in its possession 2 tanks, a grenade launcher, and 87 assault rifles. There's no need for that, and if the APD wrote a letter of recommendation that the county smelt down the surplus goods that the Department of Defense has donated to our county, and not just our county, but every other county in the country, there's this perception that the law enforcement are adversaries. I'm a part of a generation that grew up with that understanding that police are not there to protect and serve. They're someone to be paranoid about, and I see an opportunity of turning the page now that we are starting to walk back the war on drugs and take away the public health issues that we've put on our law enforcement community erroneously. There's just no need for it. Anyway, I wanted to put that out there, and I also wanted to strongly suggest, getting back to the TDA, that we set aside at least one, but probably two seats on that board for our brewing community. It just kind of has a groupthink mentality is one thing that I've observed with all the hoteliers, and don't get me wrong, they're fantastic folks, but I do believe there is a little bit of a groupthink mentality going on there, and if we had a couple of seats reserved for restaurateurs and brewers, it might be a more comprehensive look at our tourism industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Mr. Warren Furman signed up to speak.
Thank you. Good evening and happy Tuesday. Mayor, it is my assumption that adversarial relationship between City Council and Mayor's office, and I'm told not necessarily here in Asheville. However, I have criticisms of some things that I'm told will be covered on agenda or not. My name is Warren Furman, nicknamed Cherokee. I am soon to be Cherokee Elder. I am very spiritual. I compliment City Council and those who have contributed to decision for the water park. The concept, very good. The reality, though, less than perfect at the moment. First of all, you may be aware, not functioning for 2 weeks. These are the hottest 2 weeks of the summer so far. Should be functioning. Children play together. Spiritual dream of Martin Luther King in 1963, that children of all cultures play together, and it contribute to that. Should be police, park warden, supervision. Older children that come unsupervised during camp or minimally supervised during camp seem to be very selfish and do not understand that they need to be considerate of the smaller children and any others that they run into or make uncomfortable by their presence, by their boisterous presence. So I am recommending that. The maintenance, technical maintenance of the facility itself need to be invested in. It's a machine, a computer-driven machine that breaks down too often, twice already this summer, and it can be prevented. I also come to criticize the bus system. It is unforgivable that it does not run on Sunday, that it run once an hour during the week, that the concept at the top is we save money if we provide less service. It is a public service, not to be thought of as contributing to profit of the city revenue. It has to be supported or subsidized from outside, so that service can be provided, adequate service. I represent homeless community, not just homeless veteran. And others benefit too from Sunday service. I understand it will happen in January, this coming. Too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Just one. No, I can be contacted. I have given email information. I do not have cell phone. So if there are questions, if there's need for me to explain further, I am willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
If I may, Mayor, just wanted to thank the gentleman for being here tonight and for sharing that stuff. I did want to let you know that City Council voted in our last budget to expand to Sunday service, so we are going to be expanding that service as well as trying to get things better on the C route.
Mayor, might we get an update on the status of the Splash Park?
Splash Park? Splashville. Splashville is what it's, yes.
We'll certainly provide that for you.
Okay. Oh, I thought you were ready.
We'll send it out via email before the end of the week.
Okay. All right. I don't see anyone else wishing to speak, and we do not have a closed session tonight.
Wow.
So, are there any announcements? Anyone have a parting statement? Anything? No, I'm going to hit this. Wait.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I know. You're excited.
Yes.
I just want to say that I'm really proud of the Asheville Tourists. They've made the playoffs, and I hope everybody will show up to cheer the Tourists on. I believe the 3-game playoff stand begins on Wednesday, September 3rd. Hope to see everybody there.
Tickets are on sale now, and you need to get those. I would like to make...
I'll tell you, Jan and I have some good discussions in those stands. Watching
Yes,
ball.
we do. Yes, we do. But, I did want to respond to Ms. Strong. The police department is very well equipped, and we have made sure that they are getting the most that we can do from this point of view. We have a large budget for public safety. I wish it were larger so that we could pay them more adequately, but we are expecting to improve the number of officers. There's light at the end of that tunnel. We're changing policies on recognizing experience and education before people can make lateral transfers from other departments, and military people can come into our service here. And I think that the academies have done a great job of graduating cadets, and those cadets are on the street being trained day to day. And I'm very proud of the department and how they use the officers to the best protection of our public. We are short on staff right now, but that's clearing up and beginning to take better shape all the time. So I appreciate your concerns there.
Okay.